Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. Hi everybody, welcome back. Today I am especially excited because I have with me a longtime friend, Mequissa Baptiste. We met at the Model United Nations competition. I think that was back in 2015. 2015.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's quite
that was long.
a long time ago. But we had such an enriching experience at the Model United Nations competition, and I found that we worked exceptionally well together. I was always keen on bringing Mequissa onto the show, given to that she is an aspiring barrister. She is a professional singer. I also will forever have a special place in my heart for the arts, given that I'm a theater arts person. Anyone that knows me knows that I used to be heavily involved in theater arts. So I always have a special place in my heart for the performing arts. She's a master's student as well, and currently is a commercial legal strategist at a Caribbean firm. So Mequissa, thank you for coming on to the show and joining us today. I really do look forward to our discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Good, no problem. It is a pleasure. And today, what we'll be talking about is Mequissa's journey through law currently. So we'll be talking about her LLB and just tracking her journey and her progress so far. So Mequissa, I do know that you would have studied your LLB at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill. Would you kindly share with us a brief overview of what that experience was like for you?
Of course. I started studying at UWI Cave Hill in 2015. I studied law, and it was an excellent experience. I think it really allowed me to understand Caribbean jurisprudence, Caribbean law, and the way that we have really developed as a region. It also, I think, has been very beneficial to me in my current pursuits as a barrister in the UK and an aspiring barrister in the UK, because Caribbean LLB courses just generally teach you to be comparatists. You must learn how the different laws look in the different jurisdictions in the region. And it has just been a really beneficial, I think, opportunity for me. I also had the incredible opportunity of doing several mooting competitions while I was at UWI Cave Hill, which I encourage every student to do. You need to do those. And I was also able to do the Willem C. Vis International Commercial Arbitration moot in Vienna, and represented UWI doing that as well. So it was all all in all an excellent opportunity and an excellent experience studying my LLB at UWI Cave Hill. It also allowed me to take a lot of opportunities that I think I would not have been exposed to had I not done the LLB at UWI Cave Hill. So I was able to apply to be an intern at the Supreme Court as a judicial assistant for the Chief Justice of Barbados. I was able to mentor certain students who were interested in mooting. I've basically had an excellent experience. I've also been able to do a study abroad year at Kingston University in the UK.
Now, that's particularly interesting because many students might not know that UWI Cave Hill offers that year abroad program. Could you kindly share more information about the details of your specific experience studying abroad in the UK?
Of course. I applied to study abroad at the Kingston University in the UK, I was able to also apply for a bursary just to handle the expenses of travel. So UWI also provides a bursary, and I think the bursary is offered by the faculty at UWI itself. They pool together money and give study abroad students an opportunity to travel to their schools. It was there's study abroad and then there's student exchange. So I did the student exchange, which meant that I did not have to pay any of the fees at Kingston University, which was great for me because UWI is free. It's great for UWI students because UWI is free for certain nationalities in the Caribbean. So you can basically get the opportunity of studying in the UK or in Canada or in Australia without paying the fees associated with those, a lot of the times, very expensive schools. So it's a great experience financially. It's also a great way to just interact with different cultures and different people and see what life is like overseas. I chose the UK in particular to study because there are dozens of different universities in several countries that you can choose to do your year abroad. But I chose the UK because I was very, very interested in becoming a lawyer in the UK. And I wanted to really get to know the laws in the UK. I wanted to understand UK jurisprudence. I wanted to understand how the system works because they have barristers and solicitors, whereas in the Caribbean, we have attorneys at law. So, how does that work? How does that operate? I also chose to do study abroad because I wanted a scholarship to study in the UK in the future to do my bar course. And I had read before that if I wanted a scholarship, there were certain boxes that I had to tick off. And one of them was getting first class honors. So I made the strategic decision to do the study abroad year in my third year because in the UK, they do 4 courses. And in UE, we do 5 courses. So I thought, okay, well, then that's easier for me. So I can focus on one less course and then be able to get all of the A's that I need to push me towards a first class honors. And luckily for me, that strategy worked out. My experience in Kingston was great, I'd say. I feel like I got all of the benefits of living in London. I love the buses, but without all of the hassle of London traffic and all of the persons who you have to interact with, because Kingston is on the outskirts of London and just basically in between London and Surrey. So I was able to go to Central whenever I felt like just seeing beautiful architecture and traipsing through Chancery Lane. But I was able to also keep that kind of small, I don't want to say small town because Kingston isn't really small compared to the Caribbean, but that kind of, for lack of better words, small town feel. And I was also able, while I was there, to um, visit the inn that ended up being my inn of court in our temple. And I think that experience was very important for me because I was able to see what the inn was like. I was able to interact with members of the inn before I made that very, very important decision.
You see, that's very important because they always tell us that you should visit your inn, or you should make some kind of effort to visit different inns in order to determine which inn you will call home. Now, I visited Gray's Inn on a University Advocacy Day program that you generally have to apply for, and absolutely fell in love with grades from the time I walked through the door, and I knew, I think it was just a gut feeling, this will be my inn of court. This inn of court will be the inn that I will call home, eventually for the rest of my bar career, for lack of better terms. And it was the architecture, it was also the friendly staff for me, and on top of that, it was the fact that Baroness Hale, that's her in. So I said, you know what? I quite enjoy her judgments, enjoy reading her judgments. I'm quite happy to be joining an in of that attracts this level of intellect. And I do know that all the rest of the inns, it was a very tough choice, but it was simply the fact that I saw Grey's first. So I fell in love with Grey's first. So that was what it was for me. Now, we know that in your journey to come into the UK to pursue the bar, you had to go through something known as the GDL, right? The Graduate Diploma in Law. Now, some may be wondering, why would you have to do a GDL if you already have a first degree in law? Because generally, for persons who don't know, the GDL is for persons who are coming generally from a non-legal background. So persons who have degrees in other disciplines. Now, Mequissa, could you share with our viewers the essence of the GDL and the rationale underpinning why you had to undertake this course as well?
Of course. So the graduate diploma in law, I think you already explained it pretty well. It is basically a very short course. It's usually 1 year, where they pack all of the core subjects of an LLB, a Bachelor of Law. They pack it into 1 year so that persons who are coming from a medical background or an arts background or science background can still just easily become lawyers. And it's a great program, I think, because a lot of the areas of law that you may be interested in, they don't require, but you will be aided by having some sort of other knowledge, some sort of real world experience in another area. For example, if you are doing IP law, it would actually help you a lot to be coming from a science background. So this GDL would allow persons who are scientists, engineers to just quickly do 1 year of law and then go into an IP law chambers. So it's a great opportunity for persons who are who have not gone through the LLB route to actually become barristers or solicitors. I had to do the GDL because I had to do 3 courses. I had to do land law, I had to do public law, and EU law. The land law, the reason why I had to do land law is that for the Caribbean, we largely use the LPA 1925, whereas the UK recently changed the legislation to have new land laws. So for example, in the Caribbean, we still have adverse possession, but the UK, they got rid of that. So there are a lot of very important new laws in the UK that we would not have studied on the LLB in the Caribbean. And that's why I had to redo the land law. I also had to redo public law because, as is known, I think I should hope that every law student knows this, but the UK does not have a written constitution. I've been lambasted by someone who's very much into UK public law and told, well, no, it is written down. It is written. And you know what I mean.
They
You know what I mean?
on the basis that it's not codified into
Yes,
one
right.
document, but it is written down
But
and
it is
pasted all
written.
over.
I mean, yeah, okay. But you know what I mean. You know what we mean when we say it's not written.
Yeah.
In the Caribbean, we have one long document that I think it really came from the US influence on the region. We have this very long document that's codifying all of the rights and responsibilities of the government towards its people, and that is what we call the Constitution. But in the UK, it's not. It really follows, in my opinion, UK legal culture and UK legal jurisprudence, which is that um, everything doesn't need to be written down. So that really follows in public law and constitutional law in particular. So I had to spend a year just relearning a lot of the concepts that I had already learned in Caribbean constitutional law, but learning how it impacts UK persons in particular. I think I also had to learn things like the Equality Act, which we don't have in the Caribbean. We don't have an Equality Act, and that I think that was a really I think that was really beneficial to me understanding the area that I wanted to go in in the UK, understanding UK law. And I had to do EU law because even though I did EU law at UE Cave Hill, I don't know why, but the Bar Standards Board did not accept our EU law course. I still don't know why, because we are actually taught by Professor Alina Katsaroska, who, when I was at Kingston University in England, we were actually reading her book for international law. So she's very well known throughout the world. And she designed our EU law course, and she teaches it, and even she didn't understand why it wasn't accepted in the UK. But that's something that I for a while have been trying to work with the law faculty at UE Cave Hill to try to change. But I'm definitely going to look into that again, because there's no reason why I believe our EU law course can't be seen as acceptable.
So just as to hone in on a couple of things you mentioned. Now, you listed a few courses that you had to do. Generally, for those who are coming specifically from a non-legal background, I know that there are about 8 core courses that those persons have to do. But given
Yes.
that you had a law degree prior, were the courses that you just mentioned, those 3 courses, which was land, EU, and public, were those the only courses you were expected to pursue, or did you have to do over those 8?
No. So what you would be doing if you're coming from the Caribbean, or I think if you're coming from probably any common law jurisdiction, and you're trying to do the GDL, what it would be is a GDL exemptions course. So you would have exemptions, and you can apply for the exemptions straight to the Bar Standards Board. So when you apply for a certificate of academic standing from the Bar Standards Board, and you receive that certificate of academic standing, then you need to go on to apply for a GDL exemptions certificate as well from the Bar Standards Board. And by doing that, you actually have to send them, if you are interested in doing the GDL in the UK, or you have your LLB and you want to switch over to doing the bar course in the UK, save all of your assignments, save all of the materials that have been given to you, because you will need to hand that over to the Bar Standards Board for them to assess when they are deciding whether to award you exemptions on the GDL course. So I was exempted from what tort, criminal, contract, equity. I can't remember what the other ones are. Let me just check
Yeah, I
what
think I think you've got.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it. Because I just
Yeah.
went through it in my head as well. But you see that's brilliant advice there, that you would have shared, because I'm sure that persons who are looking to make that step, because coming from the Caribbean, that's not really the next natural step. The next natural step, especially if you're coming from, maybe you're a Barbadian, you're looking to go to Hugh Wooden, or you're looking to go to the law school that you are rostered to go to because of the because of your specific jurisdiction. So those things that you just mentioned are extremely key and crucial for those who are looking for that alternative to pursue their studies in the UK. Now, many people would have listening would have heard us mention something known as an inn of court. And an inn of
Yes.
court here in the UK is necessary for students who are aspiring barristers. So all aspiring barristers have to join an inn of court. And there are 4 inn of courts. So there's Gray's Inn, there is, your inn of court is Inner as
Inner
well,
Temple.
Inner
Yes.
Temple. There's Lincoln's Inn, and then I think there's Middle.
Yes.
The thing about it is you need to choose an inn. There are always questions on how do you choose an inn and that kind of thing, but most of the time you'd hear people with similar reasons, which is, they've visited, they've seen the architecture, they like it, they've interacted with the staff, they enjoy the staff. But one of the most I think noble features about the Inn of Court is that each of the Inn of Courts offer scholarships to students who are looking to pursue the bar course. And sometimes people may make a choice on an Inn of Court based on the fact that some inns interview all of their applicants, while other inns do a paper sift and then choose particular applicants to make who go on to advance to the interview stage. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Mequissa has an Inn of Court scholarship, so congratulations. That is not an easy feat at all.
Thank you.
Many students here in the UK apply for those scholarships. So because the bar course in and of itself is a very expensive
Expensive.
year. People always remind you that it is very expensive, because some of the big ticket cost items are not only the course itself or the materials, but you also have to look at accommodation. And even pre-COVID time, you had to be looking at qualifying sessions. Your qualifying sessions are basically self-explanatory. You need to go to the inn sometimes to attend these sessions in order to tick that box that you are receiving kind of workshop preparation for your practice years. Now, not post COVID, because we haven't we haven't actually gotten rid of the pandemic yet. But now during COVID, we have situations in place where most of our qualifying sessions are online. So maybe there can be a reduction of cost for some, but I don't know how all the inns work. I can only speak about how Grays is working right now. But Mequissa has an Inn of Court scholarship, and I gave all of that background for those people who don't know what we're talking about when we speak about an Inn of Court scholarship. So as I said, congrats on that. And the first thing I'd like you to do is to give us some kind of insight on what your scholarship entails.
Okay, so I want to start. I think this was a great segue because I actually have 2 Inner Temple awards. 3 if you count the Poland Prize, but I don't usually count that. But I have 2 Inner Temple awards. I got a GDL award and then a BPTC award. So um, I think I always start with the GDL because a lot of students don't know about the GDL awards. You might know about the bar course awards, but not the ones for the GDL. So each inn actually gives awards for your GDL year. And whether or not you have to do the GDL will inform which inn you are, I would say you should apply to. So for you've spoken about the reasons why You may have chosen Gray's Inn. You might have been there before and you really liked the people, you really liked the culture. One of the things that I always tell students who speak to me is don't buy into the idea that it doesn't matter what your inn is. It does matter. It matters if you want a scholarship, but it will also matter during your qualifying sessions because different inns have different personalities, I would say. So each inn has its own personality, has its own little quirk about it that you some persons may enjoy being at that inn and other persons might not, based on who you are and what your personality is. So let's get into the GDL scholarship. For the GDL scholarship, you inner and middle both interview all applicants. So that's the first thing to know. And this will be for both the GDL and the BPTC. They interview all applicants. So if you apply, you will get an interview. That's why a lot of persons are told, well, if you are not perfect on paper, you should apply to those ends because you would be able to wow them in an interview. For Lincoln's Inn and Gray's Inn, they don't interview all applicants. They go through a paper sift. But I have been told by other students I've spoken with who have asked me for advice, that they actually really like that idea because it helps them to know if they are actually ready for the bar course or if they should try again next year, or it helps them to get rid of that imposter syndrome that bar students are infamous for. So you don't feel like oh well, everybody got interviews, so they just felt pity on me during the interview. You know that you've gotten there through your own merit, and I think that is an added security for some students. So you would need to first assess if you would like to apply to a place that interviews all candidates, or if you would actually like that added security of going through the first paper sift first. I applied to Inner Temple because Inner Temple, I think they're still the only inn that they have a guaranteed funding scheme. The guaranteed funding scheme means that if they give you a GDL award, they guarantee that they will give you at least the same amount of money for the BPTC. So, as an international student, I am about to shell out thousands to come to the UK to do this GDL. I already did my LLB. I don't know why I have to do these 3 courses all over again. I don't want to have to sit through constitutional law for another year. Please help me. So there's some security in someone telling you, okay, well, if we give you this award, we're going to give you it again next year. So you're not going to be scrambling for a student loan from your government, or you're not going to be left stranded for the BPTC because we have you covered. So that was some security as well, because for me, there is also the temptation to go the longer route and just go to Hugh Wooding and then hopefully just switch over when you are already practicing in the Caribbean and just try to get tenancy in the UK while you are already a practicing lawyer in the Caribbean. That was something that was somewhat tempting, that if I didn't have any money, I may have had to do if I really did want to practice in the UK. So having that guarantee, having that security that I would not be left stranded for the BPTC year, or right now I think it's called the BPC year, was very, very important for me. I applied, and the application stage is They ask you a lot of questions, but one of the questions that I will highlight for international students in particular is the question, what are your visa requirements? And why the UK bar? Because what I always tell international students is that the ends of court are investing in your future. They need to know that you're not going to take the money and you're going to go and do your GDL, and then you're going to run back to your country and and basically you just had a free education, and you had no intention of actually helping to develop the UK legal system or practice at the Bar of England and Wales. So they need to know that you are actually very serious about studying in the UK. And this is going to be a recurring theme when you're applying for anything legal wise as an international student in the UK. You will need to continuously prove why you want to be there and prove to them that you are a good investment. So do that. Then in the interview for the GDL, I think what makes it different is that they ask you a non-legal advocacy question. For the bar course interview, they're going to ask you a legal advocacy question, but for the interview for the GDL, they understand that a lot of the persons who come to the GDL, they are not like me. They didn't do an LLB. They did a Bachelor of Science or they did a Bachelor of Arts, and they're just switching over. So they're not going to know everything about contract or civil law. They're not going to know everything about criminal law. So they're going to ask you a question that is non-legal. And for me, they have to be fair. So they also asked me a non-legal question. My question was, because I mentioned that I did Model United Nations, and I'm a Model United Nations fellow, and I go back every year and I volunteer to help these students with the UNDP and the Rotary Club to understand international law and how the UN works and all of that. I talked about that in my application. So they asked me, do you think that the UN has served its purpose? Which was hard. I think I would have preferred a legal question, but sorry, that one was hard. But it's gonna be questions like that. They're gonna pull into your application form, and they're gonna take something that you would have been interested in and ask you that. So that's really it for the GDL interview. Now, moving on to the BPTC interview, I was able to get a couple £1,000 for the GDL. So I knew for the BPTC that I would already have that. But the BPTC is very expensive. So that would not have been enough for me to actually survive. So they also allow you, even with the guaranteed funding scheme, they will allow you to reapply to try to get additional funding. So I did that, and the application process is I believe it is the first Friday in November every year. The first Friday in November every year, that is the deadline, and it is the deadline for every single in. I have a couple of mentees, and they have applied to all of the ins. And what I usually do with them is, first I ask you to go through the criteria for each award that every in has, because the ins have different criteria. And this is going to go into what I was saying, that every in, you can't just choose an in willy-nilly, because every in has a different thing that they're looking for. And they tell you exactly what you're looking for. So when I speak to students, I say, well, you can't be mad at this particular in for not giving you a scholarship because you don't have any advocacy experience, when they've said in their criteria that advocacy experience is essential. They've basically said that. And you bypass the other ends that say, well, we just want advocacy potential, and you go and apply to the end that says, well, we actually want advocacy experience. and you can't be mad at them because they've told you exactly what they want. So each in actually tells you everything that you need to know. For students who, I'm not sure if you want me to go into the different ins and what they are looking for, or
You feel free to share your knowledge. It's okay. Feel free.
okay. So for middle and inner, I think middle and inner are two ins that I think they're so similar. They are so similar in terms of what they're looking for scholarships, your ability to actually get scholarships. The only difference is that middle's application form is very, very long. It's a very long form, and they ask you a lot of very interesting questions, I would say. So it would take a little bit longer to fill out middle's form, but I actually really enjoy those questions. I look through them, and I think those are really good questions because those are the kind of questions that you will see when you're applying for pupillage. So it's great to get a good start applying for those kind of legal roles. The Inner Temple Scholarship, it is very similar to Lincoln's, where they ask you questions like, why do you want to be a barrister? What areas of law are you most interested in, etc. Those kind of questions, which are also pupillage application questions. They weren't like that when I applied, but I think they've changed it so that it's a lot more familiar for students who would be applying for pupillage that year or the next year. And for the only difference between Inner and Lincoln now is that Lincoln asks you, they have very, very different criteria. They have very, very different criteria. And it goes to show the different legal culture and the different, remember I was talking about personalities of the ins. It goes to show how Lincoln's personality is compared to Inner's personality. The inner and middle have basically the same criteria, but Lincoln's, I'm not sure about Gray's. I have to check Gray's, but I'm sure you should know more about Gray's and their criteria more. But Lincoln speaks, they want they stress academics, they stress intellectual ability. You need to work for that Lord Denning scholarship, okay? They stress that intellectual ability, and they state right there, intellectual ability is seen in academic excellence. That's how they judge intellectual ability, and they tell you. Middle and Inner, no, they say, well, intellectual ability is good memory. It is you having sound judgment. It could be shown in academic ability. Actually, that's a good way to gauge intellectual ability as academic excellence, but it can also be shown in different ways. So from even reading the criteria, you see what they're looking for and the different things you will need to prove when you are filling out that application. When for students, I always say, when you're actually filling out the application, make sure you have a checklist of the criteria of that particular in that you are applying to. Have a checklist, and every single answer that you give, even if it's for work experience, even if it's for, oh well, what activities did you do at school, make sure that each thing that you are saying is ticking off at least two of those criteria. Two of the criteria. The criteria, I think, for all of them are going to be intellectual ability, motivation to basically to succeed at the UK bar. What else? Character, interpersonal skills, and advocacy. Depending on the in, it would be advocacy or advocacy potential. So you need to be checking off those 5 boxes by the end of your application. You need to show that, prove to them that you have those 5 abilities. And the other difference between INs that do the paper sift and INs that do the full on actually interviewing everyone is that your oral interview is also part of your application. So it's not like, oh well, this is my first part of the application, and then the interview is the second. All of it is together. So you can show, even if you don't have advocacy on the paper, you could show it in the interview, the way that you answer questions. And for the other INs that do the paper sift, you need to make sure that you are actually hitting those 5 there, because that's your first chance. So that is my rundown on how to choose an in. I can go into the actual interview and go through that with you.
Before you go into the interview, that's really helpful knowledge. No, the problem is, I guess some people can see it as a problem somewhat, but within the UK, you see why I always say that we should always embrace different experiences. So my experience of being a UK student, UK law student, from inception is obviously different from your experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But both experiences are equally good. But the only problem is me being in the UK and pursuing the bar, the narrative that was always spun to me whenever I inquired about choosing an inn of court was always, well, choose any inn. Inns, it's all up to you, really. It's about how you feel. Even if you speak to some barristers, even on my mini pupillage, I wasn't sure which inn to choose. And the barristers I spoke to at that particular chambers are just like, we just chose X and Y. Maybe you want to choose it based on the fact that, there may be a particular scholarship here or there. And yes, I know that they would be coming with their experience of when they made their choice, which would have been eons for some of them ago. So obviously we do expect the Inn of Court to change and reflect the changing times. But it's interesting that you came and you highlighted that essentially is a myth if you are looking to obtain a scholarship. Now, I always say, obviously, for those persons who are listening and viewing, always still consult the Inn of Court's official website and their scholarships. Ring their education departments, ask questions about the scholarships and that kind of thing. I know in my year, which would have been up to last year, persons who are applying for Inn of Court scholarships, we were told that you can only apply to one inn. I don't know if that's still true. Is that correct? That's still true, right? Up to now.
Well, not that you. Well, okay. So you can apply to only one inn every year. You can only apply if you are an actual member of an inn. You have to stick to applying to their scholarship.
Yeah.
But so you don't need, one thing that I found that a lot of students didn't know is that you don't need to apply for membership before you apply for a scholarship. So you can apply for a scholarship and you cannot get it. And then, or you could go through the interview process and you realize, oh my gosh, this interview process is awful. And then the next year you could put off doing your bar course. And then the next year you can apply to another inn. Yeah. But the requirement is that you can't apply to more than one inn in 1 year. And if you're actually a member of an inn, you can't apply to any other inns for scholarship.
So I knew up to last year or so, you could, if you preparing your application, even if you're a non-member, it has to be targeting one inn. And if you are doing, you can't be doing applications for all 4 inns because your application would automatically be thrown out. You have to pick an inn and apply to that inn.
Which is why it's important to look at that criteria.
Yes. So now that you're highlighting that, I think it's extremely pivotal. And I think it also has to do with the UK culture where there's a big emphasis on being politically correct, being diplomatic. So I think the inns never want to come across as though they're in competition, because we are all, as we would all know, a mooting. We all refer to each other as our learned friends. So I don't think they would ever want to be seen as in competition. I don't think they are in competition. So I think that's why they safely say apply to any inn, or choose whichever inn you think is best for you after you read. But I just want students to understand, no, me passing that process already, to really, really, really look into each inn and make the choice that's best for you. Because also you can be mama guide into the fact that I knew when the scholarship time was going on, they were saying there was this thing going around that basically, the paper sift, ones that do the paper sift and ones that do the interview, there's no real difference, because they would essentially they would choose the same kind of applicant. So it's not like one process is more beneficial than the other process. So those are little things that people need to be aware of and know which process works for them. And I can, just reflecting on everything you have said so far, people, it doesn't make sense going for a scholarship from an inn that is literally harping on intellectual ability in terms of wanting to see those straight A's, wanting to see that first class or whatever. If you know you've fallen short a little bit, don't go there. And I think that's something that unfortunately some of us learn a little bit too late, that there are little nuances. I think that's the best term. There are little nuances that go with each inn, and you need to be cognizant that although they say that the criteria is by and large the same, it really isn't. So just be cognizant of that, because students sometimes just lean into, okay, you went to a university advocacy day, or you went and you saw here, you were just happy, okay, maybe that's the end that I'm going to throw my application at, and that's it. And if you want to keep on your path in terms of you want to keep to a checklist, a particular pathway in that you apply, and then you go to the bar course next year and you keep going, then you might miss out on an opportunity where you could have applied to another inn and maybe have been successful there. So I think you really hit home some golden points. These are things that aren't unfortunately spoken about. Well, even in my research, in my final year into these kind of things, the information, as much as you have it on websites, comparative tables across the inns, you don't get to know the little nuances and the little quirks about the application process or processes for each inn, because most of the time students don't have the time to be downloading one application form and then another application, 4 different application forms, and comparing and contrasting, trying to figure out which one best suit them.
But that's why I also think it's important to have mentors. The first mentee that I had, she just messaged me on LinkedIn. She said, oh, well, you went to BPP Birmingham and I want to go to BPP Birmingham. So can you give me tips? Can you give me advice? And I said, yeah, of course. Like I benefited from some incredible mentors who guided me throughout this process. And I really don't know what I would have done without them. Just shout out to Johanna Lafayette from CARICOM Attorneys, who ended up giving me the position I'm currently in, who was my mentor for several years while I was doing my LLB. And I don't know how I would have been really here without her. So reach out to persons who are going through it, who've been through it, and ask their advice, because the saddest things that I have had to experience, I think, would be when I had students who I mentor now, who came to me and they had already joined an inn. They already joined the inn in 3rd year. before they even applied for the scholarship, because they didn't know that they could apply without joining, and they joined an in, and it would have been an in that didn't have the automatic interviews. So your CV isn't perfect, but you could have wowed them in that interview. But now you're gonna be written off, basically. Well, hopefully not, but you could be written off now because you made that decision without knowing. And to be honest, I understand a lot of persons in actual members of different inns say, well, it doesn't matter, just apply to any inn, because they don't have to be thinking about all of the risks like we do. We're international students. We are Black women. We are minorities. We need to be thinking about a lot more than persons. Even if you're not a minority, but you're an international student, there's so much that you need to consider that other persons who are just British would not be considering. So it's important to just look at all of that. But I do want to say though that there is a lot of value in actually going to your inn. So like, I don't want to get off the idea. I don't want to put up this idea that, well, if you go to the advocacy days at the inn, but you can't just choose based on that. You shouldn't just choose based on that, correct? But that will come into that would be very, very important when it comes to narrowing down. So remember, I said that inner temple and middle temple basically have the same criteria. But the difference between the inns will be when you do your qualifying sessions. So for middle, two of my closest friends in the UK are Middle Templars. They are very, very proud of their Middle Temple membership, and their two first qualifying sessions were they had a talk, just an introductory night, and then they had a dinner. And at the dinner, they had to observe proper etiquette, but it was still a bit laid back. They were still able to interact with a lot of nice people. Middle is known for being very diverse when it comes to international students. It's a very, it's, from what I've heard, it's known as like a student-oriented inn of court. Inner Temple, my first qualifying sessions, my first two qualifying sessions, I had an introductory night. It was a lecture, very nice, very nice. We had a cocktail after, just to speak to each other, and it was split into persons from inside London and those outside of London. I was outside of London, so I had that session. Then the second session, we had to come back. They stressed you must wear casual clothes. So I came back and we wore casual clothes, and it was a session with acting coaches where we were doing, like, when you think of drama club at at secondary school, and we were, projecting our voices, and we were like moving around the room, and we were talking. It was fun. It was fun. And the rationale behind that was the whole rationale behind it was that they were helping with advocacy, and it did help with advocacy, because you need to be able to project, you need to be able to loosen up and just be yourself in front of a bunch of people. So that's what they were teaching us, and I think it was a really, really good session, not only to learn about I guess our other persons who may be in our cities, but also learning some great techniques for advocacy from like someone who was Benedict Cumberbatch's acting coach. Like, very nice.
You see, this is all interesting stuff, because these are what you're talking about. You've just touched on qualifying sessions.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the nature of qualifying sessions have changed.
Yes.
Grace usually has residential weekends. I know other inns usually have residential weekends, and that's generally where we all go off, maybe somewhere in the countryside, and experience some advocacy and mix and mingle and relax and that kind of stuff. But all to do with developing your advocacy skills just for that weekend. But the sad reality is now COVID has changed the dynamic of the qualifying sessions.
Completely.
So we are now virtual. So even my introductory sessions are all online. I'm a member of the Association of the Gray's Inn Students Committee. I'm the Publicity Relations Officer, and I also manage the Raising the Bar podcast, so people can tune into that. So what the nature of that now is that we genuinely have to look to create events which still is of the same benefit, but still are very interactive events virtually. But I know from the history of hearing how qualifying sessions used to be, sadly, we're now living in a new era where they're now virtual. So but it has its pros and cons. You save some money. That's one of the pros, because you don't necessarily have to travel into London. But the con is, if you really do enjoy human social interaction in terms of the person being physically there, and you are someone that you enjoys the dinners, going to the dinners and learning about the different etiquette and that kind of thing, that's something that you obviously would miss out on a bit. But we still try to replace it with the virtual sessions, interacting virtually, but we all know virtually isn't the same as being
in person.
That's physically.
That's true. But like that's what I mean. When I actually told persons, because I think the people who will benefit from this information will be persons who come on like next year. So maybe COVID will be over by then. But like when I told one of the persons I spoke to about the differences between middle and inner, and I told like even those two first sessions were completely different experiences. I loved my inner session because I'm very extroverted. I sitting down and just listening to a lecture like just ruins my brain. Having to sit there in a dinner and doing proper etiquette makes me anxious. And I think I really liked that session with the acting. But when I spoke to somebody else, they were just like, that's my worst nightmare. That's my worst nightmare. I would hate that. I would hate it. So that's what I mean. Well, then maybe should you be at inner? Those are things that you need to think about that nobody's telling you. The sad thing is, though, I don't know how readily available the information is for students who aren't partaking in the qualifying sessions. I do know that there is a certain limit that you can access qualifying sessions before you actually start the bar course. But there's a caveat on that. You need to be a member. And obviously, you still need to think about your applications for scholarships, because if you become a member of an inn, you have to apply to that specific inn. But if you do, for scholarships. But if you do become a member quite early, so like say in second year of your degree or third year of your degree, you can already start to tap into those qualifying sessions as well.